Tēnā koutou e te whānau, ko Andrew Doubleday tēnā. Welcome this morning. Today we're looking at the Gospel reading for January the 16th, 2022. Ooh. And it's a very well-known one. It's about the wedding in Cana in Galilee. So we're reading from John's Gospel, John chapter 2, verses 1 through to 12. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it out. When the chief steward tasted the water that had become wine, and did not know where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you've kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there a few days. So, here we are in Cana in Galilee. Now, Cana is actually a neighbouring village of Nazareth. I suspect somewhere from maybe 15 kilometres away. It's not that far away. But it forms a kind of a triangle. They're both on the lowest slopes of a large hill, and on the crest of the hill sits Sepphoris. Now, we never encounter Sepphoris in the scripture. It's just not mentioned. But it's a large city. It's about 5k from Nazareth. And it sits like a bird. I think that's even what the word means. It's perched like a bird on the ridge, and looks over down the valley and into the Jordan and into Galilee and over the lake. And it was the city that was the kind of fortress city, a headquarters of Herod Antipas. And he was in the middle of building it. And I mean, I've long suspected that Jesus and Joseph and Jesus' brothers may have gone there every day, 5k walk or say up the hill to Sepphoris to work. This is where all the industry, where the city was being built. And here was Jesus living, growing up under the very nose of the Herod. So, it's a city, I don't know if I said it, which at one time is estimated to have held about 100,000 people. But we see it never mentioned. Nazareth is mentioned, Cana, a bit over here, is mentioned, but not Sepphoris, which is here. And it's a wee bit like, we live in Lincoln. We've just moved here 3 months ago out of Christchurch. We're a kind of satellite to Christchurch. And not far away, over more to the west, is Rolleston. It's a much bigger town, but it's also a satellite to Christchurch. And it's a wee bit like mentioning Canterbury without mentioning Christchurch. Oh yeah, well you've got Rolleston, and you've got Lincoln, and you've got Darfield, and lots of other places, but not mentioning the city. And it's just an observation that often the big cities are not mentioned in the Gospels. It's the little villages and the little towns, the hamlets, that Jesus conducts most of his ministry in. Capernaum itself, Capernaum and Bethsaida, 2 little villages around the top of the lake. And these are the place where all the action takes place. So here we have it. And we have just read out of chapter 1. Now, the last part of chapter 1 concerns Nathanael. And when Nathanael is told that his friends have met the Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth, he says, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? And why would he say that? Well, I want to suggest it's because we discover in chapter 21 of John's Gospel that Nathanael comes from Cana, the neighbouring village. And I guess it's a kind of like that kind of competitive thing. Like we in Lincoln may or may not say, Rolleston, can any good thing come to Rolleston? Who would want to live there? And those in Rolleston would say, Lincoln? Why would you want to live in Lincoln? What kind of a place is that? And there's this kind of neighbourly competitiveness. And I have a hunch that this is where this comes from. And so we see them together in down at Bethany across the Jordan where John the Baptist is baptizing, and then from there we read that Jesus resolves to go back to Galilee. And he heads back, and it says on the third day, this is wedding in Cana, the place where Nathanael comes from. Now presumably Nathanael is there. And so it's in this place that Jesus does his first public miracle. And I want to emphasize public, because he does it at the instigation of his mother. Now, it would seem that the rest of the family were there, and there'll be other friends and others followers of Jesus who are all invited to this wedding. So that there was a kind of interconnectedness between some of the people in Cana and people in Nazareth. They knew one another, or at least they knew of their families. And this is how the thing unfolds. So it's here in Cana of Galilee that they go. Now, what I want to suggest, and I've only just come to this recently, is that key to this passage is Jesus' mother Mary. We see her here at the end of the section, as she says that she, with Jesus' brothers and the disciples, go to Capernaum for a few days. And we don't hear from her again until the crucifixion, right at the end of the Gospel, and towards the end in chapter 19. And it's there that Jesus, as he's hanging on the cross, says to, I presume it's John, the disciple he loves, he indicates that John is to look after his mother, and says, this is your son, and to the mother, and to the son, this is your mother, and to John, this is your mother. And so we see this large gap, and yet, there's something that is happening here in this particular story. It's her response to the shortage of wine that is interesting. And let's read it again in verses 3 through to 5. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what concern is that to you or to me? My hour has not yet come. And his mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Wow. There's a sense that Mary has an absolute confidence that Jesus can and will fix the situation. And Jesus, he even expresses what seems to me a tinge of annoyance with his mother. And yet, because she's asked, yet because she's raised the issue with him, he acts. Now, I want us to notice that Mary doesn't know what Jesus is going to do. I don't think so. Does she prescribe to him how he's to do it? Does she have a list of suggestions as to how he's going to remedy the situation? No. She simply has confidence in him. She instructs the servants to do whatever he tells you. There's a kind of picture for prayer here. That's what it seems to me anyway. We can express our concern. We can bring our needs to the Lord and leave it to the Lord to sort it out. It's not our job to tell the Lord how to do stuff, what the proper process is, what it is that we need the Lord to do. It's simply a case of bringing the issue and leaving it in a measure of confidence. There's a real picture of prayer here, and this is exactly what Mary does. Now, I find it really interesting is that the narrative points us to what we don't know. Jesus is 30. We've seen a snapshot of him at 12, and then nothing else. There's nothing. We're not told anything about what's gone on in the 30 years, apart from that one incident as a 12-year-old. And yet Mary has this confidence. She's lived with him down through the years. She hasn't seen him for a couple of months because he's been out doing other stuff. But she has a confidence that allows her to say, do whatever he tells you. I want to suggest the possibility, now I can't say for sure, but I seem to kind of make sense from the narrative, the possibility that she has seen him work stuff before. There's things that she has noticed that she thinks, how did he do that? Knowing that there's been a problem and that in some apparently miraculous way, Jesus has stepped in. It's not been public, yet she has recognized that he has done miracles before. I want to commend a book to you if you haven't heard me do this before. This is a book by Anne Rice. It's entitled Christ the Lord Out of Egypt. It's actually very good. I read it some years ago. Anne Rice, as an author, has a very interesting backstory. We're not going to go into that, but she does. She has a very interesting backstory of her own. She's a novelist, and she has carefully researched this book. She's looked at all the available myths and legends surrounding the child Jesus and any extra biblical information that she could find. And she has fabricated a fictional backstory of Jesus' childhood. And I found it very, very good. And it was, as I was reading this, I had the sense, yeah, it could have been just like this. It's so well written because it's kind of consonant, it's kind of coherent with the Jesus that we discover in the Gospels. There's a kind of sense to it. Now, as I said, it's fictional. But as you read it, it kind of joins some of the dots and gives a rich picture of how it might have been. We can't know for sure. We can't know. And yet we're given this clue, and it gives credence to Mary's faith and the confidence that she has in her son. And as I said, Mary provides us with a powerful clue as to how we can approach her son, how we too can pray. Simply make our concerns known and allow Jesus to sort it out. We don't have to have the answers. We don't have to prescribe how this is to be done. And sometimes it's surprising. It's not at all what we might have expected. I hope that you found this useful. And if not useful, at least mildly interesting. God bless you.